in Africa commemorates the 60th anniversary since the formation of the Organization of African Unity.
Hi, I'm Araba Ofori-Acquah and I'm currently in Accra, Ghana. I'm a healer, writer, DJ and cultural curator, and I'm particularly interested in practicing and teaching an African-centered approach to wellness. So all the work I do is really focused around the practice of Sankofa, where we are looking back to our past, looking back to tradition in order to find new and innovative ways to move forward as individuals and as a global Black community. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done for us as Africans and as a continent, but I think a good place to start is for us to go back to what traditional African societies were built on, and that is community. I think we can agree that we can't leave it to our leaders to solve all of our problems, but we need to remember that there's power at the grassroots. So if we can come together as individuals to form communities, whether that's the community of your family, the community of your local area, the community of your ethnic group, the community of your country, whatever it is, we need to harness the power of community for our healing. And that can look like something as simple as supporting truly African businesses. It can be mentoring people, young Africans, in whatever work that you do. It could be coming together for Susu to save money. We don't need to have only solutions at the top level. We can create solutions at the ground level as well. And I think all of our healing, all of our empowerment is going to come from community. So I published my debut book, Return to Source, Unlock the Power of African-Centered Wellness last month, and I have been going on a podcast tour. So I'm appearing as a guest on a range of different podcasts, some focused on spirituality, others focused on Black identity. For example, you can listen to my interview on Say Your Mind by Kelechi Okafor. You can also listen to my interview on Yams and Yuka, and a range of other podcasts. So whatever streaming platform you use to listen to your podcast, just search my name and a few interviews will come up.
Why are you laughing, Araba?
I'm laughing because I know people will watch this whole video and the one thing they'll take away is they'll be like, hey, magic. Let me start from why I wrote this book. So just like almost every healer, my journey to becoming a healer started with my own healing. Through experiencing poor mental health and therefore understanding firsthand the power of practices like talking therapies and alternative therapies, I decided to retrain in that field. So I went to India to do yoga teacher training. And when I went back to the UK, I was focused on creating healing spaces for Black people and people of color. But the more I wanted to deepen my practice and be able to deepen what I shared, I really felt like I should be, instead of learning more about Eastern philosophies, tapping into the wisdom and knowledge left behind by my ancestors. So I started my journey of trying to understand African spirituality and African wellness. I read all the books, I read the articles, I watched the videos, and I still felt that there was something missing. So I decided to physically go to the continent. I went to Senegal and the Gambia and landed in Ghana, where I settled. And I really thought naively that being on the continent, African wellness would simply be at my fingertips. And it wasn't. So fast forward a few years, and I really wanted to put all of my knowledge into a book. Everything that I've learned through my own personal experiences, through my studies, through conversations with a range of people around the continent and the diaspora, I just wanted to put it all together to create an accessible introduction to African wellness, something that I would have needed back then, those years ago. Let me ask you this: what does African wellness mean to you? So for some people, it may sound like a completely new concept. For other people, they may draw a blank. Some people might start thinking about mysterious things like libations and rituals. But for Black people, it's essential to our well-being. All African-centered wellness is creating a wellness practice that is rooted in African wisdom and knowledge. There are so many different ways to practice African wellness. There's no one way to do it. And the great thing about it is that you can carve out your own path. Sometimes all you need is a little bit of a helping hand. So my book, Return to Source, Unlock the Power of African-Centered Wellness, is an exercise in Sankofa. Sankofa is an Akan concept, which roughly translates to go back and get it. So in this book, I'm sharing information about Africa's shared traditions, cultures, and histories, and using these as inspiration on how we can practice modern wellness that looks back towards these traditions. In the book, I'll introduce you to the 3 C's of African-centered wellness: music and movement, Mother Earth, and magic. And in each chapter, I'll give you really practical insights as to how you can infuse these concepts into your wellness routine. Throughout the book, you'll also find nuggets of wisdom from future ancestors. These are healers and cultural leaders across the continent and the diaspora who I had the pleasure of interviewing for the book. By the end of the book, I hope that you'll feel connected to your heritage, guided by your ancestors, and inspired to create a wellness path that feels authentic and true for you. I've had the chance to better understand how Africans approach wellness, both on the continent and in the diaspora, through everything from food to music and dance to storytelling to ritual. And so I really hope that this book is something that you can come back to whenever you need it to guide you in your wellness journey. And this book comes out on the 4th of April, 2023, which is the day after my 33rd birthday. So that feels like pretty perfect timing too.
What it means to be African is something that is constantly changing. Even this top that I'm wearing, we call this African print. But if you look at the history, it didn't come from Africa. It's a long and convoluted history, but we've adopted it and made it our own. So it is now African. So what does it mean to be African is such a difficult and dynamic question to answer. I think for me, being African is all about being connected to such a deep history, a deep heritage, a deep spirituality that can only come from the motherland. The reason it's called the motherland is because it's the oldest inhabited continent on Earth. Human life comes from Africa. So for me, being African is being connected to my ancestors, being connected to that history, being connected to the nature, being connected to the land. Connection and community, that's what it means to me to be African. The continent of Africa and her people has been long demonized, lies have been told, misinformation has been spread. So, for me, I don't think all Africans have to love Africa. I don't think we all even have to fight for Africa. But what we do owe Africa is to at least recognize the truth, to at least undo some of the conditioning that has led us to believe negative things about the continent which aren't true. I think we owe it to Africa to educate ourselves on true African history, to educate ourselves on the forces and the systems that have worked together to put African countries in the place where they are now. Yes, of course, we also have to look at our own parts that we've played in everything that we're experiencing. But I think it's really, really important that all of us as Africans, and I mean as a global Black community, whether you're African American, Black, British, whatever else you are, we owe it to the continent to educate ourselves on the truth and to be able to take a viewpoint, take a stand on the way forward based on fact and not based on the lies that the media has spread about our continent. The fact that only 11 out of 54 African countries officiate Africa Day as a public holiday is saddening but not surprising. The shackles of mental slavery and neo-colonialism are so tight that it doesn't surprise me at all that some African countries might be more willing to celebrate King Charles's coronation than they are Africa Day. I think this is a really sad fact, but I also do think that the tides are changing, and each of us as Africans have a role to play in reclaiming who we are, reclaiming our heritage, reclaiming our roots, and building this African Renaissance where we can all be proud of who we are and where we're going.
Campaign Africa, channeling wealth to good use.